Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second STU meeting of this year, but it's our third quarter. And we're going to go ahead and dive in and walk through some logistics. So Jay, can you go through the next slide, please? So we've all been in Zoom space for years now, so we're all pros, but just in case you need a refresher, we highly recommend folks rename yourself. So if it's just a bunch of letters, or you want to add your pronouns or your affiliation, you can do that by going to the participants list, finding your name, hitting more, and then renaming yourself. And then live transcripts have been enabled. So hopefully you're seeing them at the bottom of your screen. You can go to your Zoom controls to turn those off if you don't want to see them. Okay, and next slide, Jay, please. And then again, please feel free if you have a question to use the raise hand feature, unmute yourself. We love to see your faces, turn on your camera. I don't think we have anyone on the phone, but just in case, if you're calling to us from the phone, you press *6 to mute and unmute yourself and *9 to raise your hand. And as you saw when you joined the meeting, this is being recorded so we can post it on our website later this week or early next week for folks that weren't able to join us to review. And also feel free to use the chat to ask questions. And I think that's it for that. Oh, a note about as we have our speakers, if folks are accidentally unmuted, I might mute you, don't take it personally, but you should be able to unmute yourself after that when you're ready to speak. Okay, next slide, please. And then again, refresher on just some Zoom logistics. Your mute and unmute and video controls should be on the bottom left. The participants list to change your name and rename is in the middle, along with the chat. And if you hear something you like and want to give people a heart reaction or whatever, that's on the reactions pane. Okay. And then before we dive into our agenda today, we like to take a moment to acknowledge tribal lands in California. So the State Water Board and the Cali PA building and the hub of this work group is located in a place that we call Sacramento, California, which was and still is a gathering place for many local tribes who have lived throughout the Central Valley and the foothills for generations since time immemorial, and were the original stewards of these lands and waters. These people include the Nishanan, Maidu, and Miwok peoples, and the Putkin and Wintu nations, who have remained committed to the stewardship of these lands and waters for many centuries. And it's important for us to recognize that our organization sits on the tribal lands of Indigenous peoples, and that we are here because of the sacrifices that have been forced upon them. And in acknowledging and remembering these communities and all of the work that we do at the STU, we hope to honor their legacy, their lives, and their descendants. And just noting that not all of us are located in Sacramento. So if you want to know what tribal lands you're on, you can use this really cool application, nativeland.ca, to learn more. And I'll pass it to Jay.
Thank you, Anna. And thanks everybody for joining us today. So we'll start with our usual roll call. And for the, when I do call your category, if you could just quickly say your name and affiliation, and so we can test your mic and just get a sense of everybody who's here, and so we all get to know each other a little bit. So let's start with the review panel.
Harry Ohlendorf here.
Chris Schmidt.
Hello. EPA. Okay. Anybody from OEHA? Oops.
Wes Smith.
Tran Pham.
Great. Moss Landing. Yeah, Autumn is on a vacation today, so she's normally one of our key members here. Region 1. Region 2.
Hi, Carrie Austin. I'll be here for the first part of the meeting.
Carrie, will you be here for the review of the data?
Yeah, Jay, I thought I'd stick around for that. And it's also my farewell. I'm retiring. My last day is August 10th.
Great. Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm sorry, sad for us that you're retiring. Great for you. But I'm glad you're here for this item because we monitored some of your lakes and some interesting data that
Cool.
you can help give some background on. Region 3. Region 4. What was that? Couldn't hear.
Oh, sorry. Hi, this is Emily Duncan.
Okay, could hear that. It was a little low, but I could hear that then. Region 5.
Hi, this is Jordan Hensley.
Region 6.
Hi, this is Kelly Hook.
Kelly. Region 7. Region 8.
Jason Freshwater, Santa Ana Water Board.
And Barbara Berry, but I'll be in and out of this meeting.
Okay, thanks for letting us know. Region 9. I think the usual rep, Chad, is not available today. Okay, State Board.
Hi, Lisa Holmes. I'll be in and out during the meeting, and I'm mostly interested in item 7. And I'm with EWQ.
Great. Jennifer Salisbury is one of our regulars, but also couldn't be here today. Monitoring Council.
Nick Martirano is here.
Hello, Nick. And then, and is there anybody else that's listed in the chat? If you're not in one of the categories I read off, then please add your name and affiliation into the chat.
Yeah, I think we're good to go.
All right. Okay. So let's review the agenda quickly. We're going to start with our usual quick updates on the variety of things that we have going in the stew. Then I'm going to take a relatively good amount of time to review the new data set that we're debuting today on panel 3 from the long-term Bass Lake monitoring project, the 2019 data. Then we'll talk about the sampling plan for 2023, which we need to get moving on. Then we'll get an update on AB 762 from Angie Norda, take a short break, then get an overview of the Bacteria Summit from Charles Brook, and we'll give an update on the Realignment project, and then we'll wrap up. So anybody else have constraints on their availability for the meeting? Bruce Monson's going to join us for right around when we start item 3, the other advisor. Okay. All right, so let's start with the quick updates. So first, one of the reports that's been kind of in the works for a long time is complete, including all of the accessibility formatting that's needed. That was kind of a big effort because that we hadn't fully done that for a report before, but now we've got a good template. So that report is done. And Anna sent the link out, and the link's also in this slide deck. If anybody, after the meeting wants to access it that way. 2020 coast data and report. As a reminder, this is part of our multi-year effort to sample the coast. We're spreading it over more years due to budget constraints. In 2020, we sampled 12 zones in the Central Coast and a couple in the North Coast regions. There is a cruise report on the Stew Swamp website, and the link is here in the PowerPoint. The status of the data: there are 3 samples that have not yet been extracted, so we're waiting on those to be analyzed and get submitted to Swamp. And the report on the coast data will be developed in 2025 after we complete the sampling effort in 2024. Okay, so the 2021 Bass Lakes, we sample the Bass Lakes every other year. I'm going to show you the data again from panel 3 today. We sampled panel 4 last year. And again, refreshing people's memories, we sampled 28 lakes in 2021. You can read all about it in the cruise report. Again, the link's shown here. And the status of the data: the mercury and selenium analysis is finished. The organics analysis is still in progress. We expect the data for the metals to be processed by Jennifer at the State Board, the QA review by mid-October, and then organics by the end of December. And then this report will be drafted in 2023. Monitoring this year we have a kind of a reduced effort to get our budget under control. It included some river sampling in collaboration with the Central Valley region. The link to the monitoring plan is shown here. We've sampled 3 of the 4 sites, and we're waiting to see if we can sample an additional site. And then the realignment monitoring is begun. And again, link to the monitoring plan provided here. The 2 lakes have been sampled. 1 of 5 coastal zones have been sampled, or areas have been sampled. And then the remaining sampling is going to be conducted in August and September. And I'll let you speak to this one.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. So I think we announced the English version of our bioaccumulation monitoring program fact sheet was available back in January. And since then, we've been working on translating that into 6 additional languages and making those accessible. So that has been complete. So our, that 1-page flyer that we created that earlier, I think last year, that's available in all those languages. And the fact sheet is also available in 2 places. So at our bioaccumulation monitoring program page, right at the top of the page, or in the toolbox in our Safe to Eat Workgroup website. And so those are ready for sharing. Thanks, Jay.
Great, thank you. Then we usually get updates on the new fish consumption advisories from OEHA. Anna has been keeping track of these. So there's 2 new ones. I don't know if Wes, if you have anything to add on that.
Yeah, I could also add that we're in the next few weeks, we should be releasing an updated sampling and analysis plan, or our protocol for that. And it should be more tailored specifically to advisories, and it will include fish lengths and other tailored information. So look out for that.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. I reviewed that, and I think it's a super helpful document. I'm really glad that we put that together. It'll help us generate the data that OEHA can use. So it's great to have that information in one place. TMDL updates. We usually see if there's anything new to report from Region 5 or anybody else.
Hi, Jay. It's Jordan Hensley with Region 5. Staff are still in the review of the DMCP. And so just we'll notify everyone via Lyris list when we have something to share.
Great. Thank you. Monitoring Council, one highlight is that Ann and I are going to give an update on the stew at the next Monitoring Council meeting. We're doing a lot of updates in the next few weeks. We're also doing an update on the stew at the Swamp Roundtable. Nick, is there anything else to add?
No, just that the Monitoring Council meeting is on September 1st at the Cal EPA building, but it'll be presented hybrid. So there'll be some people in person, and it'll be virtual attendance option as well. September 1st, probably from 10 to 3. We're going to shorten the meetings moving forward.
So since I'll be presenting, this will probably be my first in-person meeting for about 2.5 years.
Yeah, that was the same for me. It was in May, so it was interesting, but it was good.
Okay. Anna, is there anything else that we should note, or does the group have any other updates to share?
I don't have anything, but if someone else on our call wants to share something briefly, this is the time.
Yeah. All right. Nothing in the chat?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope Bruce can join soon, because I did want him to hear the data overview. But so I intended to take some time with this because in the last couple meetings, it's been a while since we had a new data set to look at. So, and this is a relatively interesting one. Thanks in large part to Carrie's requests from Region 2 to sample some hot mercury lakes. So for this item, I'm going to give an overview of this data set. I'm working on the draft report that will be distributed to the work group by August 10th. And we'll give you 3 weeks to review it. It's in a similar format as the series, the 2015 and 2017 reports. It's just a data report. So the purpose is just to document the data set thoroughly, not to try to interpret things. We're going to save the interpretation for when we've got the full 5-panel set of data. And I'll talk more about that later in the morning here. So it's just a chance to show you the data set, get any initial feedback, and kind of set the stage for you all to read the report and look at the data more thoroughly. Okay, so the sampling plan for this study was written in 2015, and we updated the sampling plan. We kind of made an addendum to it for the 2021 sampling effort, but at the time that we did this study, we hadn't done any further documentation of the sampling plan. And to refresh everyone's memory, or some folks are new to the group, maybe not familiar with the study. We identified, with input from the regions, 190 lakes in the state across all the regions where largemouth bass are present, and tried to pick high priority lakes of interest, and came up with I think, intelligent scheme of looking at all these lakes in a way that allows us to cover them all over a multi-year period, but then also as we go, generate good data on average concentrations for this population of lakes, which is pretty representative of lakes in California. So we split the 190 lakes into 5 randomly selected panels, and we sample about 35 or so lakes every round. And the long-term plan is to sample each panel once. So it takes 10 years to get through all of them, because we do this every other year, so that with our in other years we can sample other water bodies. But we'll revisit each of these lakes on a 10-year cycle. But along the way, we'll keep updating our information on the status of each of the lakes on a 10-year cycle, but then also generate data on statewide average concentrations, which there's no other program that's doing that for mercury in particular, but mercury and other contaminants as well. So this slide shows panel 1 and the spread of the lakes across the different regions. 2017, we had a different set, panel 2. 2019, which is the year we're going to be looking at the data from today. 2021, which I just gave the summary for last year. The cruise report's available. And then 2023 is panel 5 that will get us through that whole list of 190 lakes. And then, overall, this helps us paint a pretty detailed picture of mercury in these priority water bodies with largemouth bass or black bass. And we're focusing on lakes with bass because the black bass are excellent indicators of mercury concentration. And we've seen this. The 2019 data set shows this, but we've seen this over the years that we get really robust information on the status of mercury contamination in lakes when we can use largemouth bass as an indicator, because we use an approach that takes the length of the fish into account. They accumulate high concentrations, and when you can take the length into account and adjust for that, you get really good apples and apples comparison across lakes and over time. So the design of this project, we include sport fish and prey fish. For the sport fish, it's focused on mercury and bass for the reasons I just described. Based on advisor input a few years ago, we added analysis of selenium in composite samples. So basically all of the fish are also analyzed for selenium to complement the mercury information. In the selenium itself usually doesn't reach levels of high concern in sport fish, but there's an interaction between selenium and mercury. And that's the understanding of it is continuing to evolve, and we, one of the reasons we collect the selenium data is that if we reach a point where that interaction is accounted for in the advice or assessment of risk, then we've got the data to do that. We also look at PCBs, which are often a driver of fish advice, and organochlorine pesticides like DDT in selected lakes. For PCBs, it's generally around 20% of the lakes. We do some PCB analysis. The organochlorine pesticides is less frequent. And for those, when we are target lakes for that, the best indicator are bottom feeders. So we target bottom feeders and like carp and catfish, sucker, and we use a composite approach because that works well for the organics and conserves analytical dollars. We also look at prey fish, and for prey fish, we try to get 3 species in each lake and 10 fish per species, and look at composites for mercury and selenium. Okay, so these figures are things that are going to be in the draft report. This is just the map figure that has the listing of the lakes to go along with the map. One of the lakes that I'm going to talk about that has high concentrations of mercury is Little Rock Lake, Little Rock Reservoir down here at the bottom of Region 6. And then also we'll be talking about lakes in the Guadalupe River watershed. So you'll see some red dots in those areas. These reports always include a summary of what we caught and how each species was analyzed. We collected about 1,000 fish. The main target species was largemouth bass. We got 663 largemouth bass. In some lakes, we don't get largemouths, but sometimes we get spotted bass or smallmouth bass instead. So those are other black bass species that we got. Carp was a common species, the most commonly sampled species for the organics analysis. But all the length information and how we analyze them is summarized in this table. Okay, so now we're getting into showing the data, and the bulk of the data is mercury and largemouth bass, and we can't fit all the data in this sort of presentation on one slide, so I've split it into 2. But these graphs are worth thousands of words, and kind of they give a sense of the data set as a whole, and then you can see how each lake fits in relative to the others. In general, there's a relationship between mercury concentrations and the size of the fish, and you can see that kind of for the data set as a whole, with as length increases, some of the mercury concentrations start to increase. But one of the notable things about this year's sampling was we sampled a couple of reservoirs in the Guadalupe River watershed. That these were requested by Carrie Austin in Region 2. And this watershed is highly impacted by what was the most productive mercury mine in North America in the New Almaden mining district. And Guadalupe Reservoir is kind of the off the chart reservoir for mercury compared to the rest of our largemouth bass data set for the state. Normally, the scale on this graph, I think, maxes out at about 4 parts per million because, you know, for some lakes, some of the larger fish get into that range. But for Guadalupe, the maximum was over 10 parts per million, and a lot of high values. The length adjustment that we do is to take each of these sets of points for each lake and do a regression, and basically use the regression to estimate what the concentration is at a length of 350 millimeters, which is around here. It's in the middle of the range of legal size fish. But you can see you can take time to look at this more when you review the report, but you can see, like, you can see the clear relationship of length and mercury. For example, Almaden Reservoir, these circles here. At the low ends, one that kind of visually stands out are these blue squares, which is Lake San Antonio. You can see, a nice linear relationship. Lake Tahoe, Keys. But I love these graphs because you get to see the whole data set at once and see these relationships. Get a sense of the big picture. Lake Sonoma, these light blue triangles, nice linear relationship. So there's a lot of nice linear relationships in here. Okay, so part 2. So this is the second half of the largemouth bass. The max here is 3 parts per million. So this is much lower, much lower scale than the last graph, which had to accommodate the Guadalupe and Almaden reservoirs. But similar sorts of things. You can see another reservoir that stands out in the data set is Little Rock Reservoir, which I mentioned earlier. It's in Southern California. Nice linear relationship, and it really stands out from the rest of the distribution. Weast Lake at the bottom here, these pink dots. Weast Lake is one of our low mercury lakes, and we've measured it multiple times over the years. It's consistently low. And again, good, clear linear relationship that's evident from looking at the graph. So there's dozens of stories in these graphs, but I like getting this kind of overview of the data set. Then we have smaller data sets for other black bass species, smallmouth bass. We only sampled them at Lake Nacimiento. We didn't get largemouth bass at Lake Nacimiento, but similar sort of linear relationship. This is another lake with high concentration. So at 350 millimeters, they're in the part per million range. Okay, so taking those length adjusted concentrations and mapping them out in this map that, the standard format that we've used over the years. One thing I'll note is that starting with the 2016 report, we made these maps more accessible to colorblind folks, and we haven't done that yet to this map. That's in the report. It will have that different color scheme. But this is a way to see the spatial distribution of concentrations based on these bins. And this is for, so it's the length adjusted data. So we are comparing apples and apples across the state. This is using OEHA's advisory tissue levels for the less sensitive population. There's two categories of advisory tissue levels. One is with the sort of higher levels is for the less sensitive population, women over 49 and men. And for this group, concentrations over 1.3 part per million are in a no consumption range. 0.44 to 1.3 is a 1 serving per week, and on down. The lowest category shown here is this dark green, which is less than 0.22. But you can see that, there are a few dots, lakes with mean concentrations over 1.3 part per million, which is a very high concentration. We've only seen a handful of lakes at that level over the years in our statewide monitoring, and 3 of them were in this data set this year. Guadalupe Reservoir, Almaden Reservoir, and then that Little Rock Reservoir. We also show the map with the bins based on the sensitive population, which is women of childbearing age and children, which are, mercury is, the biggest concern with mercury is for effects on fetuses and children. And so women of childbearing age and children are the sensitive population. For here, the no consumption level is over 0.44 parts per million. And then going on down from there, the lowest category is below 0.07, which over the years, we've kind of used that as a threshold for identifying cleaner lakes. But this 2019 data set had relatively high concentrations. And when you look at the thresholds, look at the data through the lens of these thresholds, there's a lot of red dots, a lot of high concentrations. And over the years, we do often typically see higher levels in general in Northern California around region 2 and region 5. But we do also see a smattering of high concentrations in Southern California as well. Before we started doing statewide surveys, we didn't, it was a little surprising to see the extent that mercury is also a problem in Southern California, away from the major mercury mining and gold mining of Northern California. So we're starting to, build this long-term data set with these surveys and see some, there's some interesting variation. For now, we're not, we'll save trying to interpret it for when we do an interpretive report, when we've got the full 5-panel data set. But the 2019 data are relatively elevated compared to the previous 2 rounds. And you can see by looking at the abundance of red dots on the statewide maps. 2019 and 2017 were more similar. 2015 seemed to be substantially lower. I don't want to say significantly. I'll show you why. But 2015 seems substantially lower than 2017 and 2019. These maps do include the extra lakes that we sampled. So like for 2019, we sampled those 2 really high lakes on a special request from Region 2. Lake Nacimiento was also an add-on to the 2019, which is another high mercury lake. So that's part of the reason that there are more red dots in 2019, but not, it's even apart from that, 2019 mercury concentrations were relatively high. So you can look at the central tendency statistics for the lakes and get a sense of that. The averages are quite variable for the different data sets, but the average for 2019 was really pulled up by Guadalupe and Almaden. But if you look at the medians, there's less overall variation. 2017 and 2019 are not quite as different as they were for the averages. And then another interesting sort of summary statistic is the percentage of the lakes that are over the 0.2 part per million statewide objective. And it was lowest in 2015 and higher in 2017 and higher yet in 2019. Then I also, I like these big picture graphics, and this is a graph showing a histogram of the whole distribution of all of the lakes where we have length adjusted concentrations of mercury and black bass in California over all of the years of sampling. And then the current year's data set, the 2019 data set, are shown by the blue bars. So you can see kind of where this current batch of lakes falls into the overall distribution. So overall, we have 205 different lakes now where we've got length adjusted mercury average concentrations. And here's the statistics of the overall distribution. And again, here's the statistics for 2019, which, again, relatively high mercury year. And, the average, again, is highly influenced by a couple of very high lakes, but the median is still higher than the overall distribution. And the percentage over 0.2 is higher than the overall distribution. The Guadalupe Reservoir average was 4.28 parts per million, and it goes off the chart here. Almaden also goes off the chart. The chart ends at 2.2. So the labels on the graph are hard to see, but that's not really the point. The point is to be able to show the overall distribution and how the 2019 batch of lakes fit in. And then we'll talk more about these Guadalupe watershed reservoirs in my next slide, but then there's Little Rock Reservoir, which is in Region 6 and this is one of the highest concentrations that we've seen. It's the 4th highest that we've seen for this overall data set. And it's interesting, this is in Southern California. I don't know I don't have background information on this lake. I'm just wasn't on my radar until this study. We did sample it before in 2008, and the concentration was high, but 0.9, not 1.7. So 0.9 would be more in this range, but now it's shot up quite a bit. And so something interesting going on there. Not sure if they're potentially mining in that area. There was mining in Southern California as well, or sometimes just the conditions, the biogeochemistry of the lake can lead to high mercury in the food web. So not sure what's going on there, but it's an interesting one.
Hey, Jay, before you move on,
Yes.
Carrie added a note in the chat that median bass mercury increases 2015 to 2017 to 2019. Does this have anything to do with climate or drought? Would we have expected this based on the 2007-8 statewide survey? And does it reflect known mercury levels, known high mercury levels?
Yeah, that's a good question, and something I want to dig into when I write an interpretive report on the overall data set. When the 2017 data came in and were higher than 2015, 2017 was a wet year. So I was thinking maybe it has something to do with the increased water levels and inundation of areas that's kind of a classic process that can lead to higher mercury in lake food webs. But now we're in drought, or after that it's been dry, and 2019 is even higher than 2017. So it could be related to rainfall patterns, interannual variation in rainfall. I haven't really taken a hard look at it, but that's definitely one of the things that should be considered.
And it looks like Harry has their hand raised.
I just wondered whether you're going to be talking about prey fish from those high reservoir lake sites.
Yes, stay tuned. Coming soon.
Okay.
Very soon. Okay, so I wanted to give a little bit of background because I'm sure not everybody's familiar with the Guadalupe watershed, and it's a fascinating story there with this the North America's biggest mercury mine. This is a map of that area. Guadalupe Reservoir is right in the thick of the old mining district. Almaden Reservoir is further upstream, but also in that area. And then we also looked at Lexington Reservoir this year, Stevens Creek Reservoir, which is another one that's kind of been studied in relation to what's going on in these lakes. There's been a lot of work done in this area. This is the first time that Swamp has sampled these lakes, so that's why I said that they were new in terms of swamp sampling. But there's been a lot of work done, and these levels are not really surprising compared to past monitoring. And also, there's been a lot of study. There's been experiments, trials with trying to control methylmercury in the food web through hypolimnetic oxygenation. Long-term studies looking at that. So, Carrie, I'd be interested in getting your take on maybe if you say why you wanted to include these lakes and what your take is on what we've seen.
Sure. So Valley Water is the water district that's been running those hypolimnetic oxygenation systems. And the TMDL included targets and water quality objectives, but they're in smaller fish. We calculated that would protect humans, so we don't actually get sport fish data. And we really wanted to know if not only were, what was going on in the smaller fish, but we also wanted to get some of the sport fish. So Swamp could provide that. We appreciated it. It's a sad story that we haven't fixed the mercury problem, but it is the 5th most productive mercury mine in the world, so not surprising.
Yeah. Thanks, Carrie. I want to also just take a minute to thank Carrie in general for being one of our best stew/bog members over the years. It's been great working with Carrie on the swamp stuff and other things. Could always count on Carrie to have input to, you know, like we did in 2019, to think about ways to augment the statewide work. Could always count on Carrie to read the reports and provide some good comments. So you've been a great BOG Stew member. We wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we're kind of running out of time fairly soon, so go a little bit quickly through these graphs. There will be a full set of these in the report, but in the cases where we've got data from 2019 and from historic, you know, prior surveys, we show the comparison. And in general, these comparisons highlight the stability and the robustness of largemouth bass, length adjusted, well, black bass as an indicator. In general, the results, these averages are very similar across years. For these two lakes, there's different species, and we indicate that in the graphs. So for Bass Lake this year, for 2019, we got spotted bass, but the prior survey had been largemouth bass. They're fairly similar. You know, one thing that we can do is we get, you know, as the data set grows, we can maybe try to understand finer scale variation between species. In both of these cases, the smallmouth were higher than the largemouth, but you know, that's not necessarily indicative of a more consistent pattern. But in these graphs show the average plus 2 standard errors. So it's a 95% confidence interval of the mean, essentially. And when the error bars don't overlap, then there's a significant difference. So in many cases, there's not a significant difference between years. Some cases there are, but again, overall, generally, things are surprisingly stable across years. As you know, these examples show. Lake Nacimiento is one of the higher mercury lakes. Not, you know, the difference doesn't look significant between the recent sampling and the earlier sampling. Leg Lake, you know, there are lakes that are consistently lower, and Leg Lake is an example. Things have been right around 0.2 in 4 rounds of sampling. So it's not that there's no interannual variation. We do see some, but overall things are surprisingly stable in my view. Okay, and then one of the nice things about this design with the randomization of each panel is that we get a good representative mean each time we go out. That's what this graph is showing. Again, but this is the statewide mean plus or minus 2 standard errors. So it's the averages that I showed in the previous graph, along with standard errors to go with them. And again, if these are basically 95% confidence intervals of the mean, and you know, this shows that relatively low mean in 2015. This does not include the special request lakes. So this year's data set made it clear that you know, that's the way to go, because Guadalupe and Almaden would pull this up a lot. So this is just the lakes that were in the panel to begin with, and not any of the add-ons, to get a good, you know, a more defensible mean for each year. Harry, you saw your hand go up?
Well, I took it down. You answered my question about whether those specially selected lakes for 2019 were excluded from your comparison there.
Okay, cool. Okay, now on to prey fish. And we are running short on time, so I'll go quickly, but we collected about 1,000 prey fish as well, various species. The most common ones were bluegill and largemouth bass. And the frame of reference here is the 0.05 part per million objective from the statewide objective. And here are the data. A graph of the, that line is supposed to be at the 0.05 mark on the graph. I'm not sure what happened there. But this is the lake-wide mean for each lake. And the prey fish generally, show a similar pattern across lakes as the sport fish. So for Guadalupe, again, kind of off the charts relative to other lakes, 1.6 part per million. I mean, that's a super high level for a sport fish, but these are small fish, less than 10 centimeters. Other lakes that were, I've got this thing blocking me, but other lakes that were high, like Almaden, Lake Sherwood had a high mean for the largemouth bass. And I think Nacimiento's here. So there's some variation, but overall the prey fish do track the sport fish. Okay, and then the organic story is a very brief one. We switched to a different lab in 2019, and the lab was not very good at analyzing organics. And in the past, we've been able to get detectable concentrations of PCBs, but in this round of sampling, they were all NDs in 23 samples. They did detect DDTs in a couple of samples, but this organics data set was basically a bust. We're switching to a better lab as of this year, and so that shouldn't be a problem going forward. Okay, that's the end of the data overview. Any other questions or thoughts about it? Okay, yeah, Harry.
I wondered if you could go back to those first slides you showed plotting the data. You had the two high sites in the first slide along with a number of other sites, and then you had the rest of the sites.
The length mercury plots or this one?
No, earlier, the first data, here we go. So here, if you cut this one off at the same scale as you have on the next slide, and then you did the two high sites separately.
Yeah.
I think that would spread out the results here for these lower sites, so it would be more comparable to what you see in the next slide.
Yeah, I think I like that idea, because having Guadalupe and Almaden on here makes it hard to see what's going on with the rest of the data set. Yeah, I think I'll do that.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, well, we're right on time, so I think we'll go to our next item. Okay, so next up is the sampling plan for next year. and we've been talking about this in our meetings over the past year or so. And we need to start thinking about this now, basically because in order to get a collecting permit application submitted and allow the time for that process to happen, we need to get that permit application submitted this fall. So the goal of this item is to just kind of let you know what the timeline is, and so you know what feedback we need, and we need feedback on the list of lakes by September 1st. And I'll explain this a little more. Okay, so the plan for 2023 is to do Bass Lakes Panel 5 and complete the 5-panel set. We want to remain consistent with panels 1 through 4, and make this again a consistent, complete set for all the panels. And that means we've been including add-ons for OEHA, trying to fill specific data gaps that OEHA identifies for developing advisories for the water bodies that we're sampling. And then through the years, we've also been able to include some other requests from the regions, like we did for Cary with the Guadalupe watershed reservoirs. I'm not sure exactly how the budget is looking. This is something we'll need to figure out, but if the regions have high priority additions for next year that they want to request, it's good to know about those and to see if we can fit them in. So the driver of the timeline is needing to submit the collecting permit application. I'm going to send out the list of lakes today. And like we usually do, I usually send out the list. OEHA gets back to me and lets me know what data gaps they want to fill in the lakes that we're sampling. The regions let me know if there's any other lakes that they want to sample. So we need to get that feedback by September 1st. And if anybody's got any initial thoughts on that now, we can talk about that now. And then at the November 3rd meeting, I'll take this input, turn it into another addendum to the monitoring plan that captures what we're aiming to get out there, and then I'll present that and we'll finalize it at the November 3rd, the next meeting of the STU, November 3rd. So before we come back to this, whether anybody's got thoughts now, just, oh, no. Yeah, I showed the map already. Okay. Okay, we can talk about that now. If anybody's got any thoughts at the moment about lakes that they, are priorities for sampling next year in their regions.
Hey, Jay, it's Carrie. I just dropped a message into the chat. We've been having a hard time getting budget to do post-oxygenation fish mercury data from Lake Hodges in Region 9, and not clear when we're going to start having that for San Pablo Reservoir in Region 2. It's a lot of money and effort to launch a boat and go out just to collect one set of data, but we have been using small largemouth bass, so basically young of the year, as remediation effectiveness indicators, just as a starting point for monitoring. Is there any way that could come up and get collected from Lake Hodges and San Pablo Reservoir? That could be something to consider.
Great.
It's a new and different kind of oxygenation from what Valley Water has been doing in the Guadalupe reservoirs.
Well, that's exactly the kind of thing that we would like to be able to support. So thank you for mentioning that. And as a parting gift, we'll try to make it happen.
Thank you, Jay.
But you have to come back to hear about the results if we do.
Deal.
Okay.
I'm curious. You know me.
Yep. So that's on the list of, you know, it's you know, seeing if the budget can accommodate that. Anything else that anyone has in mind that they would like to have on the wish list? All right. So the last thing I want to do is part of this item. I think we're going to finish this item quicker than planned. Is just to look ahead a little bit and the big picture of what we're up to. So we're nearing the thrilling conclusion of the Bass Lake monitoring, 5 panels, and then also the multi-year effort to sample the coast for the second round. So in 2024, we're planning to finish the coast. And then other highlights of the year, we can, since we'll have finished panel 5 the previous year, we can, you know, to be consistent, I think we should produce a data report on panel 5 to document that data set, but then draft this interpretive report on the full Bass Lake data set. And then there will be possibly some realignment sampling in 2024. And then since we'll have concluded the first round of Bass Lake monitoring, we'll be at kind of a stopping point on the coast as well. It's a good time to assess our long-term priorities and plans going forward, and coming up with, you know, evaluating the available budget and what we can do within that budget, and you know, in response to priorities that are always evolving with realignment, equity and management, regional board priorities, OEHA data needs. So it's kind of a strategic, you know, a good time to strategically look forward at what we'll be doing going beyond 2024. And so a couple of interesting reports coming up, this Bass Lake report, and then also a report on the coast survey would be coming the next year after we get the data set, you know, the last piece of the coast monitoring puzzle for round 2. Another interesting data report, which for the coast, what we've done in the past is have a combined data and interpretive report. So that would be in 2025. So those are some of the coming attractions for the fish monitoring. Any additional thoughts or questions about plans for next year and beyond?
I think, Jay, the only thing I would note is for our regional board partners and OEHA and our tribal partners to really kind of get ready for that discussion. We want to have an active discussion in 2024 about the long-term priorities and what needs are. We're starting to do this through our realignment work, but that's slower, one region at a time. And so, you know, get ready to speak up and share your thoughts. We'll try, you know, acknowledging that sometimes it's uncomfortable speaking during large meetings. So when we conduct that assessment, we'll try and get your thoughts through a multitude, a different variety of ways, through kind of like passive surveys and things like that. But please, you know, gear up for providing that sort of feedback so that we can really make an informed decision on how the bioaccumulation monitoring program and Safe to Eat work group, what we're going to do over the next, you know, 10 years, right? Yep, thanks.
Hey, everyone, this is Emily Duncan. Is this an okay time to ask a question? I don't know.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I don't know how many of you have paid attention much to the DDT issues in Southern California, but Sea Grant of Southern California and I think Sea Grant of USC held a workshop last week that myself and my supervisor participated in. And I think there was one person from OWIHA there. And I don't know, there's just been a lot of concern about DDT. And of course, it's nothing new. But with the ocean dumping and all of this stuff happening, it seems like they're trying to revisit or improve communication and data analysis on that issue. I don't know how much this group discusses that stuff. It seems sort of like essentially Sea Grant is trying to figure out how best to spend state and federal money that is going towards this research. I don't know how much anybody in this group knows about that. I know that you guys are looking at fish tissue, bioaccumulation, sampling, all of that stuff. So I just thought I would bring it up, see what people know about it. I don't want the other folks, like Sea Grant folks or other agencies, to be kind of reinventing the wheel with these types of analyses, but I know there's a lot of work that OWIHA does. And of course, there's the PV Shelf Superfund site and a lot of work that goes into that. So I don't know exactly what my point is here, but I just know that for future projects, that's something that could keep coming up. Oh, PFAS, Nick said, yeah. I mean, there's so many things to investigate, but just a heads up.
I appreciate that. It's definitely of interest and relevant to what we do. We've sampled the fish in the bite in collaboration with the bite program and SQUIRP, and focused sampled in the PV area. We haven't seen big hits on DDT in where we've sampled. I don't think we've been in the the exact area where the contamination is the worst. Mm-hmm. But Ken Schiff and Karen McLaughlin are partners on that, and kind of.
Okay, yeah, Ken was at the workshop, so that's good. Yeah. Okay, I know the bite program is happening and all that. I just wasn't sure how much like DDT is analyzed in maybe like urban lakes or things of that nature. I don't know. But yeah, just so you know, it's sort of kind of getting like I feel like it's getting a lot more attention again. So I don't know how that's going to play out, but just, yeah, thanks, Jay.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, I mean, it's, definitely an interesting story, sad story, but Ken was just telling me about it a couple of weeks ago. I had heard about it, but recently hundreds of barrels of DDT waste that's like maybe 20% DDT were
unclear. I think the barrels it's not 100% known what was in them. I mean, it could be petroleum waste, but the EPA is basically saying that most of the DDT waste was bulk dumped, meaning just, take a tanker barge out and empty it.
Without barrels?
Yeah, without barrels, but the barrels were also used to dump other sorts of waste. So we don't, it's not clear exactly what's in the barrels, but there are barrels, and that is not a good visual for the public. Of course, nobody wants to learn about these things, but yeah, no, it's a mess. But yeah, there's that, and then of course there's PV Shelf. So,
So we, 50 years later, we thought maybe things were calming down with DDT in the Southern California bite, but doesn't seem like
perhaps not. Yeah. Anyway, Okay, thanks.
So, and overall, we've done a fair amount of DDT sampling. In our earliest surveys, we did it, pretty, included it and looked for it pretty much everywhere. But we didn't see many water bodies where the levels were exceeding OEHA screening or ATLs, because the ATLs, they're pretty high relative to the concentrations that are out there in the environment. So we deprioritize that given our budget, limits, budget limitations, and focused on, so that's how we came up with this approach of being very selective about where we do PCBs and where we do the organic.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, you can't measure everything all the time. Yeah,
right.
For sure. It seems to be more of a coastal fishing issue, but but wherever
it is important to get data, we can do DDT wherever regulators, stakeholders want us to do it. So
thanks.
Yeah. Wes, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was at that DDT Plus conference, and I think there are some other breakdown products and analytes that there's some concern over those and what impact they might have both ecologically and to human health. And some of those compounds aren't really well characterized on the human health side, but just getting a better characterization of what the occurrence is in a variety of fish species is one of the main things I took away, at least from the seafood safety front, beyond the communication. Because I looked at some of our data for the PB shelf area, and PCBs and mercury drive the majority of that advice. But I don't know if some of these other breakdown products would change that.
Thanks, Wes. Barbara?
Hi, yeah. So I'm not super familiar with this group, but I was wondering when the last time, if Big Bear Lake was sampled as part of this process.
It's been fairly recent. I can check that quickly at the break and let you know. And also for you and for everybody, I mean, what I'll do to check that is to look at the Safe to Eat portal, which is part of the STU website, and it's a great resource for checking the available data.
That's good to know. I also just had a quick question. We're planning on, or we're possibly going to be permitting a new effluent to Big Bear Lake for highly treated wastewater, and I know we're concerned about potential CECs and bioaccumulation in the fish there. I'm trying to look for potential resources to inform myself about what I should put in their monitoring plan for the new discharger. Do you have any suggestions of where I could go for that?
I'd be happy to talk with you about that. In the San Francisco Bay, we do a lot of CEC monitoring and have done some monitoring near the biggest outfall. So we've seen PFAS, we've seen PBDEs there. But I could talk with you a little bit more at length about that, and
that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So we'll Tessa, go ahead, but we need to keep it moving for our next speaker.
Totally. I was just gonna reply to Barbara that she should also contact Erica Calve, who's the CEC program lead at State Water Board. I'll put her info in the chat if you haven't already talked to her.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Emily and Barbara, for asking those questions and interesting discussion points. right, on to item 5.
Yeah, so before Angie jumps on, I just wanted to introduce her and note that this group has been talking a lot about AB 762 over the past couple of years. And we've been receiving questions recently, like, what's happening with that? Where do we get information? So Angie is going to give us an update and share her own slides to do so. So Angie, feel free to take it away, introduce yourself, and fill us all in. Thanks.
Okay, good. I'm going to pull up the slides here. Can you hear me all right?
Yep. Okay.
Okay. So it should be sharing my slides now. All right. So like Anna said, I'm Angie Norda. I'm working for the Division of Financial Assistance at the State Water Board in the Stormwater Grant Program unit. I've been at State Board about 10 years, 9 of 10 in DFA, and I worked for the Office of Enforcement. And then before that, I was working at the Lahontan Water Quality Control Board. I did help Swamp with some things way back when. Up in that area. So this is kind of an out of the box project for my unit. It's been an interesting venture so far. And so the grant officially is called the Fish and Shellfish Consumption Advisory Grant, or Advisories Program Grant Project. And I'll just give you a brief overview of the grant in these slides. We're going to have some time for questions at the end. I'll go over where the grant is in the status of the grant and some of that sort of thing. I know you guys probably know more about some of this than I do, but I'll go through this. So the purpose of the grant in general is to assist local agencies in posting health warnings for fish consumption. So that would be in areas where contaminated fish or shellfish may be caught. And I'm sorry, I have some background noise from another meeting I was in that's finishing up. So those are areas where there's contaminated fish or shellfish may be caught in California water bodies. And the main tasks of the grant are providing outreach to the local agencies, and then developing an application, as well as collecting those applications, and then determining which local agencies get the funds, and then also collecting the reimbursement requests and paying out the funds to the local agencies. So for if anyone's on the call, just a background, the fish consumption advisories are guidelines for how often you can safely eat fish caught from California water bodies. And OWIHA has the fish advisories on their website. And so you go to this link and look for the fish advisories section, and you can search by county or species or water body. And then there's some other statewide advisories listed on that site, which would not apply to this grant. And then this is an example fish advisory. This would maybe be one example of something that would be posted out on site in a more permanent fashion. So just taking a look, let's say at the channel catfish, which is the 4th row down, the younger women under 49 or younger would be able to eat 1 serving a week safely, and that would include children. And then for the second column, women over 50 and men over 18 could eat a total of 2 servings a week safely. And then looking down at the last row for the black bass, if it's in red, that's a do not eat or do not consume warning for younger women and children. And then women over 50 and men could eat 1 serving a week safely. So I wanted to go over the legislation and funding. Anna already mentioned AB 762. So that was enacted in 2019, and it requires local health officers to post fish advisories. And before that, my understanding is that local agencies were only urged but not required to post those fish advisories. So Senate Bill 74 was enacted with the Budget Act of 2020. And this allowed DFA to create a grant for an initial $380,000 to fund these health warning signs on at the site-specific locations. And then it also allowed $50,000 to be added annually as needed to the grant. So the grant agreement is with the State Water Resources Control Board, Division of Financial Assistance, and CCDEH, the California Conference of Directors of Environmental Health. A little bit more about the deliverables. The initial outreach document was just to inform local agencies of the funding. The funding application, CCDH helped develop that application. And also I worked with the grantee as well as a WEHA staff and a WEMA staff to come up with a prioritization matrix, which will help score the applications. So again, thanks for everyone who helped out on that, who had the insights on that, and I'll get to that a little bit more later. The list of awards is another thing that the grantee will be sending out, and then after installation, all the local agencies will will submit photos of their signage and then work with CCDEH to get paid back. So the grant timeline, the agreement was executed in October 2021. The initial outreach was sent out in May, and the application was sent out last month. So local agencies have a due date of September 30th to get their applications in. We've had some questions coming in, so I know that that information is out there. And then the notification of awards is planned for about February 2023. As mentioned in the application, the local agencies are going to need to install the signs within 180 days of the award, and that's based on legislation timelines. So I wanted to note that here specifically. The work completion date of the grant is currently February 2023. That is probably going to be extended out because the grant was running a little bit behind. So that's been requested. The time extension has been requested. Hopefully we can approve that. So there'll be enough time for the installation and for everyone to get paid back. So eligibility requirements. Funds need to be distributed to the local health officer. Actually, funds need to be distributed and passed through the local health officer. And the application cost breakdown. So some of the eligible costs are going to be administrative costs and materials and labor and installation costs. So all of that can be included when local agencies apply. So a little bit more about the prioritization criteria and the scoring. The whole detailed scoring is within the application document. And you can ask questions about that later if you'd like. But the main items are water body size, and then the number of do not consume advisories like we talked about before. The number of fishers, so what's the usage out at the water body or in that specific place along the water body. And then OWEHA's been helping, they'll be helping with the Cal EnviroScreen score. We've had some questions from applicants so far. They're not quite sure which score. So we're going to be working with them to double check all of those scores once they come in. A couple other things. that help with the scoring travel time to another water body with an advisory. And then there's some bonus points if there's 0 signs already at the water body. So somewhat as an aside, on the DFA side, we have a task to report to legislature by the end of the year. We've already started the report since the review process is fairly lengthy. And the overall task is to summarize whether the appropriated funds are sufficient. So since we don't have the applications in, we don't know that information yet. So we're going to be updating legislature probably next spring or summer. So the next steps, the applications, like I said, are due to be submitted to CCDEH by September 30th. This contact information I pasted here right from the application. So they can email their application in or mail it, and the emails are here. So I went over things pretty quickly here. I'm assuming there might be some questions. Thanks for having me talk about this. And OWIHA and OWIMA staff, thank you again for all the help so far. I'm sure we'll still be in coordination. And thanks to our student in our stormwater unit, Owen Bratton. He's also listening in, and he's been helping out on different tasks for this agreement. So just wanted to open up to any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Angie. I'll just note that a lot of the information that Angie provided on these slides, well, first a PDF of the slides will be shared with the notes for this meeting, but I also provided a link in the chat to the outreach and application materials. It's like 3 or 5 page PDF, I think, that was referenced during the slides. So you can get more detail on the specifics of the application there. And with that, we will open it up for questions. So feel free to unmute yourself, raise your hand.
Hi, Angie, this is Wes from OWIHA. I just have one question that's not so much related to the grant, but posting of the signs themselves. We've received 2 calls from various environmental health agencies wondering about requirements as to location and also material requirements for the sign, the size. And I just wanted to see if there was a point person that I could direct them to, or.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of this process, the grantee asked me what the requirements were. And, I asked Susan Clasing from OWIHA, and I think your whole group there, we really determined there wasn't any sort of specifications, unfortunately, that we can give out. I mean, we did have a question, can we provide handouts? No, handouts or something of that nature aren't eligible for the grant, but I think it's going to be something that needs to be more permanent in nature. So there's going to be the health officer is going to be required to operate, I guess not really operate, but maintain the signage. And so just so it's somewhat permanent and of that nature, I think it would be eligible. There was some discussion of whether there should be like a QR code on the sign in case these things change over time, that could be used. And there is some limitation because not everyone has a cell phone, or there could be vandalism, but that's one option, I think, or maybe have replace some. I'm not quite sure. I can't really visualize exactly what the local agencies are going to approve, but maybe have some sort of way to change those out over time as the different advisories change.
So then just to circle back to Wes's question, are you the person that we should point people to when they come to us with these questions? Or is there someone else that we should point people to?
I can't say I'm going to have an answer for them. I'm definitely the contact from the DFA side of things. you know, a lot of the questions are coming right to CCDEH. Maybe we can have an offline discussion between Wes, you know, and try to come up with some guidance. So then no matter who gets contacted, we can send out that information and give out the same information.
Okay, that sounds fair. And
okay.
Looks like Allie has something to say. Sorry, Anna, not to interject.
Okay, unmute. Yeah, so I just to kind of follow up on that too, it seems to me, for discussion purposes, there should be a point person at CCDH, since they're, you know, that's kind of their charge to communicate public or environmental health risks. So maybe that's something Angie and others, we can talk to the point person there and make that information available. Because yeah, we're in the same boat, Wes. We're getting, regional boards are also getting questions. I've received some questions. I know Anna's been getting some questions too. And I think there's some level that we can help consult and help if a regional board's familiar with that water body, provide some insights. But as far as a point person, I would say CCDH seems like the appropriate place to go.
Yeah, that might be a good idea. And I just, I'll be coordinating with Justin Malin is the contact person for the grant. He's more on the detailed side of some of the more technical issues. So I would say Justin Malin would be the person to contact about things like that. And we'll just have to maybe collect like a Q&A, like a frequently asked questions, maybe just keep a running list even of some of these. If you have some that have come across, maybe we can do it that way, because all the different questions are a little bit different.
Yeah, and even if we just develop sort of like a guidelines as far as, you know, proximity to access for fishing, and then, you know, a sign big enough to see from 50 feet away or something like that, might be good. But we could maybe have a meeting to discuss that offline.
Yeah, so I've added an action item for the swamp staff, OEHA folks, and DFA folks to connect after this meeting to kind of noodle on this and figure out next steps.
Awesome, thank you, Anna.
Sounds good, thanks.
Okay, well, if no one else has a question, we can stop for a 10-minute break. So take a stretch, get some water, whatever is needed, and meet us back here at 11:20 to wrap up the rest of the meeting. See you then. And I'd like to welcome our next speaker, Charles Brook, a former OEMan, to tell us about a bacteria summit coming in September. So with that, I will stop sharing, and Charles, take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Sorry, my neighbors are getting solar, and my dog apparently does not like it.
Not a fan of green energy, huh?
Yeah, I guess not. So let's see. So what I wanted to do is make sure that everyone's aware of the Bacteria Summit that's going to be occurring in September. It will take place September 14th through 16th. It's going to be co-hosted by the water boards and Casca. I'm just merely aiding in its facilitation, because when I was at the water boards, I was, again, helping this occur. And I wanted to make sure that it was successful, so I'm continuing to do that. So the purpose of this summit is to really first understand what it means to have waters that are safe to swim and shellfish that are safe to eat, making sure that that's based on the latest science. Are you guys seeing my my screen right there?
No.
Oh man. I apologize.
No worries.
How about that?
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Sorry, I apologize that. So again, making sure that our waters are safe to swim, shellfish that are safe to eat. That's why I wanted to make sure that the stew group was included in that, and people that could participate as best they could. But overall, when the state adopted their bacteria provisions and applied those to the state, I think it was a pretty consistent understanding that we would need to have a look back at those and how that they were implemented in different areas, and making sure that they still applied and they were based on the best available knowledge, best available measurement techniques. And this is what this summit really garners to address. We want to make sure that we're pushing that envelope forward, and we are adapting to the way things are changing and the new knowledge that we have. So this will be separated into 3 days. Again, 14th through 16th. It'll take place at Cali PA headquarters. So in the Byron Shear room, tentatively, if things things could always change with COVID. We never know. But that is the current plan. Day one, we want to develop this common understanding of the evolution of the standards, how they came out, the epidemiological studies that were occurred even in the mid the 1950s, the 70s, all the way down to the early 2000s, and how are these regulations that we have developed now put into place based on that information. Day two, we're going to be reviewing the current source reductions regulatory tools. What are the tools we have on hand, right? How are we implementing this? Is it working? if it is working, what's working the best? What's falling short? And what are potential improvements or opportunities that we can reach those goals? So after that, the day three is going to be looking at day one, day two, and identifying the regulatory actions and research for achieving those identified in the first 2 days. What next steps do we need to take to make sure that happens? And so again, I want to make clear that this is not a conference, right? I think a lot of people, when they see a big summit like this, a couple of days, they're going to think that there's going to be 3 days of presentations and technical talks that's wonderful to hear. This is not. So this is an opportunity to work with stakeholders in the private and public sectors on challenges that bacteria pose to our ability to recreate in and eat shellfish from California waters. So there will be working groups developed all 3 days throughout this. You'll be working with participants. Will be working directly with each other to make sure we are considering all sides of this equation and making sure that we're pushing forward in a reasonable and effective way. We hope that there's a work group that's developed from this, or that we can piggyback onto existing work groups with actionable items that we can address afterwards. So there will be a registration coming out. It will be first come, first serve on August 8th. So you'll probably likely be receiving those via the various listservs we have. It'll be going out everywhere. We do hope that people that can attend the entirety of the summit, because it's going to be important to follow that throughout all 3 days of this. I know it's called the Bacteria Summit, but they will be interested in predominantly fecal indicator bacteria. That's going to be I know cyanobacteria, and especially for bioaccumulation, is an important metric, but this is, the regulations for that aren't as solidified as we do for fecal indicator bacteria. So this will be focused on fecal indicator bacteria and the best management practices for those, while I do believe that in the future, cyanobacteria will be added to that likely. So if you have any questions about the Bacteria Summit, you can contact me, email me, or call me. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Other than that, please look out for this registration email if you are interested, and make sure that you get in there as soon as you can, as soon as you see that email. So with that, that's all I have. If anyone has any questions, please let me know.
Yeah, one question, Charles, is if folks cannot attend in person, will there be a streaming option for people to view, or Zoom, anything like that where people can attend virtually, or is this solely an in-person experience?
So we will likely be recording the talks and allowing those to be, so the goal is for it to be in person, because there's going to be so much collaboration and actual work group, like in-person work group items. It's going to be very difficult to stream that and especially have people engage in that. Let's see.
So talks will be recorded, but folks maybe not.
Unless things go south
Yeah.
as far as COVID numbers are concerned, in-person recordings probably be posted after the fact with follow-up data information as well. So that's the current plan.
Awesome. Thanks.
Let's see. Even though we'll focus on FIB, the discussion about leveraging sampling programs, water bodies, and most for HAZs. Likely, yeah, Nick. So Nick asked, even though it's focused on FIB, he imagines that there will be a lot of discussion about leveraging sampling programs and water bodies of concern, including those for HAZs and bioaccumulation, et cetera. That's very possible. Like everything's on the table here. We're going to have folks from quite a different, several different areas on this. I mean, from the measurement side, program side, regulatory side, everyone's going to come into the board here to try to talk about this and see what we need to do to move forward and make, we can hit these targets. What is safe to eat? What is safe to swim? And what does that look like in terms of bacteria, for shellfish and freshwater and, coastal waters? Let's see, I think I have a hand up, Gian.
Yeah, so I'm from OC Public Works. So I'm actually planning on attending the summit. I'm actually gonna be in the panel for the first day. The message, the reason why I'm there is because of my involvement with CASCA, and I have this, I don't know if it's good luck or what, shellfish issue, both recreation issue and shellfish issue in the County of Orange, especially Newport Bay. So in the panel discussion, I'm probably gonna actually talk specifically on the shellfish issue. So Nick brought up a great question. There are some issues about even Vibrio and bioaccumulation. This probably gonna be talked about in the sense that's related to the shellfish issue, right? Because when we talk about the risk, there is pathogen risk. There is also general health risk of shellfish. So we've worked with local agencies and freshwater at Region 8 on the shellfish issue. And we've done studies in dry weather, and we are planning on the wet weather studies on shellfish, how the FIB, relates to pathogen actually in the tissue. So a lot of things are going on, but there are still remaining issues or concerns with shellfish standard and probably site-specific objectives. So stay tuned. It's going to be a good summit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to pigeonhole it into FIB. I mean, that's obviously the outlook, because that's what we are. That's the guys that we're operating under, right?
Of course. I think
but I mean, and that's exactly right. We want to make sure that we identify everything on the table that's hindering us, or is a problem, so we can make sure everything's on the board when we move forward, and start to address it a little bit more holistically there. So yeah, I'm glad you said. I think we'll probably have a call later on today.
Yeah, and just before we go to our next item, I just wanted to note that we understand that we swamps do understand that the focus is on fecal indicator bacteria, but the nexus between consumption and shellfish is well within the realm of the bioaccumulation monitoring program and the Safe to Eat work group. Although admittedly, we haven't had the budget to monitor shellfish consistently for quite some time. But we wanted to bring this item to this group's attention because we know we have a ton of experts in our network that might be interested in this work and could contribute to the discussion. So stay tuned.
Wonderful. I got to pop off, everybody. I appreciate everyone listening. And any questions, you can email me, give me a call. I greatly appreciate everyone's attendance and their comments.
Great. Thanks so much, Charles. See you in September. So just to confirm, Jay, can you see the slides?
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks. So we are really close to wrapping up our call today. We like to keep them short and sweet, as y'all know. And so I just wanted to close by providing y'all with an update on how things have been going with the bioaccumulation monitoring program Realignment and our statewide tribal engagement effort. So I've given a couple of updates over the past few meetings. So since January, we, again, right now the realignment is focused in the San Diego region. And we've had our 4th advisory committee meeting on May 12th. Last year, the focus was on gathering perspectives, needs in terms of data and information by our advisory committee to create a monitoring plan. And people, as Jay noted in our slides earlier today on our quick updates, monitoring is happening based on those advisory committee recommendations. This year, while the monitoring is happening, we're switching out our focus on communication and engagement needs. So we know that we're really great at producing very valuable reports and posting them on websites, but AB 762 has shown us that those reports don't reach everyone, and it's important to figure out how to get the amazing data and information that we produce through our program to the people that are fishing and consuming fish and shellfish, not just recreationally, but for subsistence and tribal and cultural purposes. So we're working with our San Diego Advisory Committee this year to develop a communication and outreach plan. It'll be focused for the San Diego region, but because of how my brain works, I'll be thinking about applying this to the other realignments that happen in the future and then the program at large. So stay tuned for that later this year. And we're hoping again for an in-person meeting in San Diego in September and October. That'll be limited to the advisory committee members, but we're looking forward to doing that. As a part of the realignment process, I've mentioned in past meetings, really early on, we learned quickly that we need to dedicate more time and resources to engaging with our tribal government partners. And so starting in March, we kind of implemented this tribal engagement plan that's focused on relationship building and information sharing. So we're not necessarily trying to get tribes to commit to anything. We're just trying to match names to faces and share resources and information. So I've had the great privilege and opportunity to meet with a number of tribes since we first launched the engagement effort earlier this year. We've sent emails to the California Waterbirds Tribal Matters email list 3 times now, and we mailed hard copy letters to our contacts for tribal chairs for the close to 200 tribes in California, minus Region 9, right? They're already working on things with us in April, and I just submitted the request yesterday to send out another series of letters. So those will be going out and hopefully in inboxes, not just to tribal chairs, but also to environmental directors and tribal historic preservation officers or cultural directors that we have contact information for tribes throughout California. So close to 400 letters will be going out before August 10th. And so if you are working with tribes or you are a tribal member on this call, know that we want to hear from you. We'd love to continue these conversations, not just this year, but long after 2022 to continue building relationships. I'll note that these conversations with our tribal partners are informing our decision on which realignment region will go next. We've already spoken to the regional boards earlier this year. We've got their needs and priorities, and we want to be sure that for the next region that we select, we have a nice breadth of tribal representation and folks that are going to be able to participate and engage through a 3-year process, which it's a commitment, right? And so we want to be sensitive to that need. So we'll send out another email blast in mid-September this year. But if you are a tribal representative, or you work with tribal governments and think speaking with us might be of interest, there's a link to the tribal engagement interest form on these slides. It's also in the agenda, and it'll be included in the notes. So please, basically that form just asks, who are you? Who should we include in the meeting, and when's a good time to meet? There's no other, and if you want to talk about other things, what should we include in that agenda? So that's all that form asks for. And I'll be looking for new folks and setting up those meetings over the coming months. And so before we wrap up, does anyone have questions about the realignment or the tribal engagement process? And for those regional folks on the call, we are still on track to figure out who the next region will be, to announce that the end of this year. And we won't announce it without confirming with the region. So don't stress surprise there. But we'll be circling back with our regional board partners, just like we did in January, February this year. I'll kind of circle back in October, November this year to set up follow-up meetings as needed. And I'll also note that I think this happened since January. I did give a presentation to the deputy director level folks throughout the 10 water board agencies earlier this year. I can't remember when, back in April. So it has happened since our January meeting. So hopefully those folks have been informed, but for regional folks, if you want us to give another presentation to your management or your team to get a better understanding of what the realignment process entails, what expectations are for participation throughout the 3 years, please reach out to me directly and we can set that up. So with that, I think we're on time. And as we wrap up each meeting, I like to kind of go through action items and kind of give us a picture of what's coming next. So the next meeting has been shifted from November 2nd to November 3rd from 9:30 to 12:30. I haven't adjusted the calendar invitation yet, but I will shift that in the next week or so. And that's just to prevent scheduling conflicts for our main presenters during that time. So stay tuned for that. We also, Jay noted that Jay and I will be presenting at the next Swamp Roundtable in early August, and we'll be presenting to the Water Quality Monitoring Council on September 1st. So we'll be giving a data update to the council and also speaking about our next steps for the realignment, tribal engagement, long-term planning, all that stuff. So if you want to hear our spiel again, come with us on September 1st. Our November meeting, like the kind of potential agenda that we have is a sampling update for this year. As Jay mentioned earlier, we'll be going over the final monitoring plan for 2023. We're hoping to line up a guest speaker. Not going to spoil it, but it's going to be pretty great, hopefully. Again, planning for 2024 and beyond. And also it'll be our last STU meeting of the quarter or of the year. So we're going to kind of look ahead to what our plan is for 2023 and our quarterly meetings there. If you have any other ideas for topics that you think we should cover at the next meeting or any future meeting, please feel free to reach out to Jay and I and send us your ideas. We always love receiving those emails. So going over the action items that I heard during our conversations today, I didn't hear any for item 2, but Jay and others are usually good for correcting me if I miss something, so please feel free to chime in. For the 2019 Bass Lakes Data and Report, Jay's gonna distribute a draft report to the email list on or before August 10th, and we're asking that folks review that and send Jay feedback by the end of the month so that we can kind of wrap that up and get that finalized and out the door. For the sampling plan for 2023, Jay's gonna send the list of Panel 5 lakes out today, this afternoon. Again, we need OEHA and regional requests for additions. Again, the request, it's not guaranteed, but we want to hear from you anyway. No later than September 1st. And again, that's because of the permitting timelines that we need to meet. And Jay will develop and distribute the draft monitoring plan in enough time for y'all to review and then for us to finalize at the November meeting. For our awesome AB 762 fish and shellfish health advisory postings, the action item I have is for me to set up a meeting between Swampers, the Division of Financial Assistance, and OEHA folks to discuss a potential looping in CCDH, finding a contact, and what it might look like to develop FAQs and guidance and resources and things like that. For the Bacteria Summit, we just heard Charles give an awesome kind of update on that. That will be September 14th through 16th, as he mentioned, and we're noting to keep an eye out for information on how to register, which should be in inboxes on August 8th. I will be keeping an eye out, and I'm sure it'll be going out through our STU list as well, just in case. So you might be receiving multiple emails, but we want to get the word out because again, there is that nexus with consumption and what is safe to eat, which is literally in our name. So we want to contribute to that if we can. For the, oh yeah, Harry.
Was there a date for the 2023 plan?
For the 2023 plan. Yeah, so we don't have a date for when the draft report or the draft plan will be out. I imagine it'll be sometime after September 1st, but we haven't committed to a date yet. Jay, if you want to do that, welcome.
Let's say mid-October.
Okay. Sounds great.
The ballpark.
Thanks.
Great question. Thanks, Harry. For the realignment and statewide tribal engagement, I will continue to update y'all on our progress. And again, if you work with tribes or are a representative of a tribal government or a tribal advocacy group, please, if you're interested in, talk and stew, swamp with us, I highly encourage you to sign up for a meeting using our tribal engagement interest form. We've been really great about as soon as folks submit, we can get back to you within 3 business days. It's usually within 1 to schedule the meeting and get things set up. As usual, we will post the meeting notes, a link to the presentation, the recording of this call on our meetings page within a week from today, and send an email out when that's ready to go. And again, if you have any future meeting or speaker topics, please let me know. How did I do, Jay? Did I miss any action items?
I think you got them all. You did great.
Awesome. Well, with that, we will end a couple minutes early. I hope you have a great rest of your morning and afternoon, and we'll see you in November.
But one quick thing I want to throw out, you didn't want to spoil it, but I want to put out a teaser that Chad Laughlin suggested that we get Colin Eaglesmith to present at the November meeting, or at a meeting soon. So we're trying to line that up. So Colin is one of the leading mercury bioaccumulation researchers in the US, and he's recently presented on some work that he did, I think, in Idaho. So that's what we have in mind. We'll be trying to line that up.
Awesome. Thanks, Jay. All right, y'all, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.